So hi, everyone. We're at the official start of the meeting, but I'll wait for some people to join, paying attention to the join rate. There is a link to the meeting notes in the chat. Please add your name as you join. And if you feel comfortable sharing video, please do so.
So just a minor question. How was I supposed to find this meeting link via the data tracker? Because I tried to find it and couldn't and had to be helped by other people.
It's in the upcoming meetings page. I'll send you pointers.
Okay, thanks. Because I went through RFC editor group and then I hit a dead end.
It's in the
Yeah, we
RPC.
need to adjust that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the group is RPC and not RFC editor.
No, it's not under RFC editor. I think that's what Paul's saying, because there's a heading above for RFC editor that has RSWG and RSAB underneath it.
Alrighty. Maybe give it just one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, it looks like the join rate has slowed down. I'm getting a little bit of noise feedback. I think it stopped. Okay, good. So welcome to the first RPC community call. This call is modeled after the tools team call, so please feel free to share your video if you are comfortable doing so. I understand some people are not comfortable doing so that's okay. Briefly go over the agenda. We'll introduce the team, talk about the goal of the meeting. Then I will go over the strategic transforms that were identified during our retreat in early April and projects that are tied to those. Then we will provide a snapshot of the document work that's going on right now and highlight some hot topics there. We also will provide statistics at the end. And is there any other business, any topics that people would like to add to the agenda? All right, not hearing any. Thank you. All right, so let's start with staff introductions. I'm Jean Mahoney. I'm Director of Communications and Strategy of the RFC Production Center. I'd like the team to introduce themselves. We will start off with Alice. Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Russo, and I'm Associate Director of the RFC Production Center.
Lynn?
I know Lynn is having some trouble getting into meeting.
Okay. Well, how about Alana?
Hi, I'm Alana Paloma. I've been with RPC. I've been an editor with RPC for about 5 years now.
Madison.
Hi, everybody. My name is Madison, and as of June 6th, I will be with the RFC editor for about 3 years.
Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Tarrant. I've been with the RPC for 3 years as an RFC editor, and I'm also the document specialist.
And we have regrets from Rebecca Van Reenen. Megan.
Hi, Megan Ferguson. I am the RPC project manager.
Kaylin.
I think Kaylin is also having some trouble connecting. I'm not sure if she made it in yet.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Well, Ted.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ted Harrison. I joined the team about a year ago, and I'm the citation specialist for the RPC.
Sandy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy. I'm the Director of Operations for the RPC, and I've been with the RPC for a number, or RFC editor in some life, for a number of years, and I'm based on the West Coast.
Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen Moore, and I am a senior technical editor on the team. I have been with the RPC for about 12 years and AMS for about 28 years.
All right, it looks like Lynn has joined. Lynn.
Jean, I feel like she might be in some partially joined state where she was like getting looped somehow.
Like what happened to Ted. How about, I thought I saw Kaylin. Is Kaylin, are you fully here yet?
I think she's still having trouble. I'm trying to help her out with that right now.
Oh, thank you. All right. Perhaps they can introduce themselves when we're at the snapshot part of this agenda. So I'll go ahead and move on. So in early April, the RPC held a strategic retreat where we focused on identifying strategic transformations, basically the state we are in now and the state we want to be in. And this exercise was not to necessarily figure out all the steps to get there, but just to state, clearly where we are, where we want to be, and then start working on identifying some projects there. So this next section of this meeting, I'll just be running through those transformations and also providing some details on a project that ties to that transform. So, but before that, I see that there's quite a few comments and I'm just checking the chat. So it looks like several people are having issues with this. So Lynn and Kaylin aren't the only ones. Are we, now we don't have MeetEcho support for this meeting, but does anybody have any advice for people who might be struggling with this session? I see perhaps like refreshing the page.
Yes. I was having trouble with Safari and I just got back on with Firefox and it's doing much better.
All right. So hearing maybe change your browser. And then Barry points out perhaps too many people sharing video. Well,
I've been on MeetEcho sessions that had way more people sharing video and it's done just fine.
Okay. And it looks
So
like
feel free to route anyone that's having join issues to me.
Should we,
I'll help them.
Should we just move on and get into the agenda?
Okay. And I apologize for the technical issues here. Oh, hey, Lynn. All right. So the transformations, one of the big topics was productivity and process efficiency. And so when a document comes into the queue, we have had like one editor do a whole lot of work on that document, lots of checklists, just, you know, the formatting, reference checking, and so for one editor spends a lot of time on one document. And so we want to go from one editor does many tasks to have specialists providing expertise in document intake, formatting, reference checking. And so this is in progress. We have already created a doc specialist position that's held by Sarah, and she does document intake and formatting. We have a citation specialist, and that's Ted, and he checks the accuracy of the references and also the cross references, for instance, to ensure that an author hasn't like switched digits when they say see section 3 and 9110 and they meant 9101. And we are looking, so the project here, what we want to do is also see if this would be beneficial to have a specialist that handles source code, checking and validation, for instance, or a specialist that focuses on accessibility. So checking a document for accessibility, checking figures, accessibility has been discussed on the RSWG working group. Policy is that RFC should be accessible. And we are working on, as a side note, also working on providing guidance on providing guidance to authors on making documents more accessible. This will be placed on
Jean,
the author's website.
Do you think we could
Yes.
share the agenda, a notes page so that people can follow along?
So the chat had a link to it.
Right, I've just posted it again. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's fine. It's just slightly difficult to follow without looking at that, but that's fine if others are okay with it.
Fair enough. Okay. Alrighty, and I'm just skimming notes real quick. The chat, sorry. All right, so the next transformation, currently when a document enters the queue, we don't have much information about it other than it was approved and whatever note is added to the RFC editor note. So we are looking at what we want. The transform is we want as much information as possible to come from the authors. So the project here is an intake form, very basically, where when a document enters the queue, we'll have questions for the authors that will help us edit the document. As we are looking at what questions that we want to ask the authors, we realize that perhaps some of these may need to go even further upstream. So we'll be working with the community. I see energetic nodding, that perhaps questions could be added to the Doc Shepherd review template, or perhaps like the ISG ballot or the RFC editor note template, maybe that could be filled out a bit. So it's also in progress.
Jean, just to say, Paul has his hand up, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I don't know if you want interruptions on this, but
please,
as a working group chair with first-time authors, or actually even third-time authors who seem like first-time authors, any communication about a document that came from a working group, like tell us about the document, has to include the chairs. Authors will gloss over stuff that I know ends up being important to you.
All right. No, thank you. Colin.
Hi, yeah. Also, just a reminder that all of this stuff is stream specific. So if you're wanting input an intake documents, it has to be done on a per stream basis, and the rules are different for IETF and IETF and independent stream and so on.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Colin, I'm confused by that, because this is about the shape of the document. Does it have this in it? Does it have those things in it? It's not about the process behind which the document's been produced or anything like that.
Sure, but all of the templates and the write-ups and so on are done differently in the IETF and the IETF. So you can expect a different write-up and different sets of information. And it needs to go to different people to review it and make sure it's correct. It doesn't goes to the working group chairs as well as the authors for the IETF, but it goes to the IRTF chair rather than the for the IRTF documents and so on. So there's different small differences perhaps, but there are differences in the different streams.
Okay, well, my concern is that now makes what is one job now 5 jobs, and just expands things, because this is meant to be things like, what's the, given the example there, is the document supposed to be similar to an RFC? That sort of thing. Does it contain these things? There's, it's an editorial stuff. It's not, as I said, not a process thing, and that's what I think.
I think as Paul said, it's got to go to the equivalent of the working group chairs, because the authors will miss things, and who that equivalent is depends on the stream.
Understood.
Thank you. And we will keep that in mind, because there would be a tools component to this. So who would be CC'd on the message, for instance? Russ?
So I completely agree with Colin, and I'm worried that Jay's thinking about this as not being integrated into the process. If the IETF documents don't get merged in with the Shepherd write-up, people stop paying attention once their document's approved. And so it's really important that you capture that information while they're still paying attention.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the chat here. Karsten asks, can we do the form in such a way that it can be source controlled part of the author's repo? We'll make note of that. We are right now in the process of brainstorming what questions we would like to ask and where we would like to ask them. Thanks. All right. So the next note here is we'd also help with process efficiency. Currently, our editing notes are placed in different places. They're captured in mailing lists, our database. We've got another database. So we are looking at ways to consolidate this. One of the things in progress right now is Purple. You may have heard of Purple if you've called into the tools call. Purple is the replacement for queue management software. It's called Purple because our current interface, user interface for our queue management system has a purple background. So one of the things that we struggle with is we would love to take notes on documents before they enter the queue, but our current software doesn't support that. Purple will be able to support that, for instance. So I'm looking forward to that. Paul?
Will that tracking continue after it's in the queue? Like you said, so example, I forget, well, as an example, someone's doing the reference checks, and they will say reference checks are all okay. Will that appear in that as well, or is it just
Yes.
Okay. And will authors have visibility? I don't want them to have write access, but will authors have, and possibly working group chairs, have read access to that?
If I may, we're integrating
Yes.
this with the data tracker, and when there is communication that should be visible, if there are artifacts that should be visible to authors, that they will be.
Perfect. Thank you. With the one example I gave, if somebody frobbles with one of the references because the author did it wrong, it'd be nice if the author could see that and then go, "Oh no, wait, I really meant it this way," or something like that. But yeah, great. That I trust you folks to expose whatever is necessary.
Roman.
Thanks. So since we brought up purple, I just wanted to double check my understanding of the notion of an intake form. Is that going to be serviced out of the data tracker? Is it going to service out of purple? I'm just wondering how many workflow systems, potential working group chairs, and authors need to be consulting.
Well, as I said, right now we're in the brainstorming section of this where we're asking what questions we want to ask. And then we will talk with, start looking at what it will look like. For instance, if this is something purple, we would, smack a button in purple when the document or we don't have to smack the button. Document enters the queue and the intake form is sent out to the authors with the appropriate people CC'd, for example.
Is there a preference that anybody has for how this is done?
I like reduced workflow systems, so I just heard purple, data tracker, and email.
No, Roman, one of the design principles in purple is that it's the tool that the RPC uses. When non-RPC people are going to have to interact, they're going to interact with data tracker or the RFC editor website. So we're not adding new places that people have to go hunt. And we're carefully trying to make sure that the whole thing has a directed flow. So this intake form, as Jean mentioned, is something that is in the speculation phase. And I think we've heard pretty thoroughly that we don't want somebody to have to go know some new system that they have to go to enter this thing. So.
Sandy?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, like, it's the early stages, and right now we imagine having some manual experimentation with the form, right, to see if we're asking the right questions, if it's getting the right information back. And then I'm hopeful that at some point we can automate it, but I don't expect to wait for automation to start to be able to make moves on this.
Yeah, is that okay? Are people happy with a manual process around this, even if that's, I mean, I see Paul nodding, or is there preference to wait until there's a fully automated process around this, like a data tracker form?
Personally, I think it's too soon to say.
Yeah, Jay, I was nodding because we'll be able to, we can't tell if we wait the whole time, and we will be able to get a feeling, as like Sandy said, some of them happen a little bit manually. We'll get a feeling for what's going on.
So this is Russ. I think you should start with a small sample. You'll learn the most important guiding things with the first few.
Well, thank you.
And nobody seems to be pushing back on this whole idea generally, that this is an important thing for the RPC. Great, thank you.
We can't tell the answer to that, Jay, without seeing the first form.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of what Russ said. I mean, a little bit of this is the proof's in the pudding, as in if we expend the extra time to do the intake kind of form, what does that mean? Is our documents going to pop out faster? What's the return? And how would we measure that?
Yes, the goal is for us to be able to edit documents more quickly. For instance, a question we would ask is, what terms would you like to have consistently capitalized? Provide us more guidance on a style sheet that we create manually right now by looking at, oh, this term is always in camel case. Is that consistently in camel case? And then making those updates. All right. So we're at the bottom of the hour, have half an hour left. I'll try to move very quickly through the rest of these transforms. A smaller project is that occasionally we get a document that really isn't ready for final editing. And so we're looking at clarifying the process on when we might need to return that to the stream and the authors. Right now, a lot of times we just soldier through, and it takes a lot of time, and we realize maybe, we've like thrown good time after bad, so it's a corner case, but it is something that we would like to have a documented process on identifying, and also what it looks like when we say, we're sorry, but we can't work on this document. It needs some more loving from the authors before we can clean it up.
Please send those back fast.
Right. Our current processes, we find that we have just spent too much time on it, and then we feel like, well, we've already spent this much time on it. Oh, yes, thanks. All right, so other things we're doing, tooling transforms. So, we run tons of manual checks. We run like 30 different scripts to check documents. I see people frowning like, wait, what? Yes. So the tools team is creating software for us, a full-featured editor based on VS Code libraries that will validate the XML, run all our checks like consistent capitalization, hyphenation, RFC specific terms, BCP 14 words. It will integrate with GitHub. This is DraftForge. There's a link to the repo. It's functioning. It doesn't validate it has some issues with validating the XML right now, but if you want to check it out, it's a really neat tool, and we are looking forward to using it. Moving on. Sorry, and I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, John, please.
Gene, one thing you said concerns me a little bit, and I just want to check on it. There's been a very long-standing tradition in the RFC series, going back to double-digit RFCs at least, about a lot of author discretion on small issues of style. And the tradition has been that as long as the document is internally consistent and makes sense in English and what have you, that there is no global requirement to make certain that everybody uses the same writing style. One of the risks of automating things more and more and having more and more test kits and doing some of the other things you said about capitalization and things like that is to force everybody into the same mold. Are we going down that path, or are we being careful about it?
No, so that's one of the reasons for the intake form. So right now, our workload is part of what we struggle with is, well, is this consistent? What did the authors mean? Did they want it consistently hyphenated this way or capitalized that way? So if we had a style sheet like that, and what the checkers do in DraftForge is it doesn't force an issue. It doesn't force consistent capitalization. It will show, well, this is capitalized, first letter capitalized, but the same word has or phrase has camel case this way. So it's highlighting that there are capitalization inconsistencies, hyphenation inconsistencies that we can follow up with the author and ask, hey, did you want this done consistently?
Okay, that was the answer I was hoping for. Just felt I needed to check.
All right, thanks. Paul.
I hope that this ends up being more like the warnings list under ID NITS, not the errors list. And that
Exactly.
would be super helpful early on. So thank you for even thinking of this, even though most of them will be, no. It's like, absolutely, this late surprises always throw off authors. So this is great.
And DraftForge will be available to authors also. So they can run these checks before it enters the queue and clean some of the stuff up themselves. Oh, all right. John? Are you back in the queue?
No, just being careless.
All right. So another bit on tooling, current state, ADs, get a ton of email. The RPC sends email to the ADs with the AD, please review this technical change. And so to make it easier for the ADs, the transform state is that our notifications will land on an AD dashboard. So that's also part of what Purple can do. So again, Purple being our queue management system and being able to send that notification where the ADs want to see it. All right, so moving on, community requirements. We, so as I mentioned, we do a lot of work and we're wondering though, are we doing too much? I mentioned all these, scripts that we run. Perhaps some of what we do, the author should do, as Paul mentioned, catching issues with term inconsistency early on before the document hits the queue. That would be great. So, but we'll be looking at also perhaps like what we do right now is we validate certain source code. We validate Yang, MIBS, XML, and ABNF. And this is time intensive for us. And perhaps after talking with the community more about it, maybe this is something that we would expect the authors to handle in the future. So we're looking at this, and we haven't started this yet.
Any thoughts on it now from anyone?
Yes, I would just throw in, I'm sorry, there's a queue. I'll get in the queue.
Sorry, I have no strong preferences about the queue order. I was just going to say a lot of this seems related to technical correctness of the documents, and the earlier we can catch these issues, the better. So I would be, if we're building tooling for this, we should be letting the authors run it while they're developing the drafts as early as possible, rather than leaving it to the RFC editor to do at the last minute, because if they find bugs, they're technical correctness bugs, not style bugs.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, just riffing on that and the earlier concept of, is this document really ready to start the RFC editor process, or does the stream need to touch it more? There's long been a tendency in working groups to say, oh, don't worry about it, the RFC editor will fix it. And I think we need to start pushing back into the culture that anytime someone hears someone say that, they need to stop and think about whether or not it's really the right thing to do. And if it's especially if it is a technical thing, like somebody's going to have to be fixing up a formal language, that it happens before it get to the queue.
Thank you. Also mentioned here is XML features. So the moving to V3 of RFC XML has added to our workload. We have 3 outputs to check. There's a lot more things, a lot more elements and attributes that authors can add to their documents. And this has not been started, but we would like to take a look at like text and postal address formatting. Postal addresses have also been discussed in RSWG. That they should be the elements should be replaced with postal line, which is a bit of streamlining in the XML. This has like rendering and re-rendering implications, but this is on our to-do list to look at. Oh, all right. So did somebody? Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. On this one, so look, there is a trade-off here between giving people flexibility within RFC XML to do lots and lots of different things, and the cost and time impact it then has on the RFC editor for editing that effectively. So if we have like infinite variability about the way that lists can be created, so that you can indent here, outdent there, you know, do bits and pieces and that sort of stuff, then that's, you know, a significant degree of complexity. There needs to be a conversation about this. The more that we expand the feature set of RFC XML to enable people to do more things, the more that we add semantic tagging, the more that we do other things, the greater work we are creating for the RFC editor. And that conversation I don't think has been had yet, and this is important. If a goal is to improve the speed of the editing process, then we need to perhaps consider whether or not there should be less features available for people to use in RFC XML.
Paul?
I disagree with Jay that conversation hasn't been had. It's been being had constantly for 15 years. With the possibility that RFC 9280 bis is going to be enacted sometime soon, this comes back to the RPC, and so, which I think is the exact appropriate place for these conversations to happen. The community can ask, but it is up to the RPC to decide new feature, or will be, to decide new features for the RFC XML. And one of them can simply be that adds complication for us. We don't necessarily see it, but these conversations have been happening at least for 3 years on the RSWG. We don't need to start them again here. I think this one bullet point is all of this newness adds some cost, and that can be considered as we are putting stuff in later.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Paul, and was going to partially say that much the same thing, although I would have put a longer estimate on how long these issues have been under discussion, by probably double, certainly an extra decade. But it also raises one other issue, two other issues, one of which is this interacts with the author style stuff. I think we can counsel authors to avoid doing too many different kinds of creative things in a document. That's a kind of inconsistency. But as long as the style is reasonably consistent, giving the authors the flexibility to figure out what works for their documents, to get working group and area agreement and what have you on what works for those documents, I think that's probably within the range of things which we used to consider reasonable author discretion. But the other piece of that is that there are some things in RFC XML that probably percolate into final RFC formats that at present don't work. And the only things authors can do right now, other than reporting these errors and hoping they get fixed, and in the particular case I'm thinking about, that was done 2 years ago, is to write a note to the RFC editor saying, the way in which this is formatting is clearly unacceptable, and the following things might be acceptable, and your problem. And that's a variation in some ways of what Pete and I were talking about, but in other respects, it's a real problem when the tools don't work properly. And I don't know how the RPC solves those problems, but I'm glad it's not my problem.
Jay?
So I'm going to push back a bit on Paula. I don't think we have had this conversation explicitly about how the feature set of RFC XML leads to a resource issue within the RPC. We've not had the conversation about what can we take away or what should we remove. Our conversations are very much at the level of what are those features that are required and how are people able to do things, not this bigger picture one. And I don't think this is an RPC decision to make. I think that would be problematic. I think this is a larger community conversation about what is the level at which it expects the resources to be made available for the work. What level of flexibility does it think it needs to have around this, and balance those two together. I think that it's a very focused conversation around that, and it's necessary because we basically have continual scope creep without us having that sort of level of focus on it.
I think we're agreeing that absolutely this should be something that is discussed with the community, and with this as one of the main parameters. I know that between version 2 and version 3 of XML, we explicitly removed some things for this reason. So what you will see, and especially as Karsten is saying over in the chat about, oh, well, people will do workarounds. Yes, a few people will, and the few people will cost more time in their documents, but you all see that, the RPC sees that all the time with just wording things, where someone will adopt a very complex style of wording for a particular reason, and then you all have to figure out, is this worth it or not? I think we can defer this, and I believe that there will always be people who will want workarounds, and I think that's fine. One of the things that can happen is that, in fact, authors can put notes to the RPC saying, I have done this way for this reason. The RPC can go, oh, okay, we'll fight around it, or nope. But having notes to the RPC, I think, in a document is excellent.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. We are agreeing. I think that I need to be blunt here. There is one other element to this conversation we need to have: is it the job of the people who write documents to write correctly, technically correct, readable, understood documents, or is it for them to determine every last element of the formatting of that document and the way that it looks and the style around it? We are increasingly supporting the latter, and that is where the cost is coming in. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have in some degrees, whether or not that's actually the way we want to continue going. And Karsten, it'd be nice to hear from you on this, because without being rude, I think you are one of the people pushing for as much degree of control over formatting as possible.
If you are speaking, Karsten, you are not being heard.
Karsten mentions in chat he's having audio issues that he's working on.
Pete, do you want to? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, on this topic, and when Karsten starts making sounds, I'll be quiet. As I said in the chat, I I am one who agrees with Jay that we should lean more toward the former than the latter. That, you know, the author should go for technical correctness and formatting should be mostly the RPC's problem. But there are cases, and I gave one example, but there are others. The answer shouldn't be, you must format this in Purple Comic Sans. The answer should be, I want it to kind of look this way. Show me what you got. And the RPC can take the lead on that and figure out what might work. I don't think we should be over specifying formatting, but I think we need to be able to express what semantics we want out of this and what readers of the document are expecting. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Kirsten.
Should we move on and come back to Carsten when he's...
Yeah, I'm sorry, he's having difficulty. I would like to, so I've got several more strategic transforms to go through. We also we're going to provide a snapshot of work going on in the queue and highlight some stats. I've scheduled only 1 hour for this meeting, so we have 14 minutes. Would people like me to go through the transforms, or should we cut over to discussing documents in the queue?
I think we should go on to documents in the queue. We can do, you know, further transforms at a later meeting.
Right. So I hear Q snapshot, Paul said transforms. I do know that yeah, and we will have, so these calls will be scheduled monthly and we can continue working on the transforms. Well, shall we? I will go ahead and move to the queue snapshots, and we will pick up transforms next time. No. Let's see. I'm now going through Alice. What's up?
Hi, I'm actively working on an expedited document, which is the STIR passport RCD. The details are in the notes here. I've got one document currently in Auth 48 and 2 that are ready to be published.
Awesome, thank you. Lynn? I know Lynn was having issues earlier. Her note should also be in the notes. I'm looking, Lynn doesn't, I'm not seeing Lynn in the meeting. So moving on, Alana?
Hi, so I'm actively editing 6712 biz, which is part of cluster 527. Once that's finished, that will help 4210 biz also move along in the queue. I also have 3 docs in Auth 48 of my own, one of which is cluster 506. And then I'm also watching cluster 520 for Rebecca while she's out. And that's about it for me.
Thanks, Alana. Madison.
Hi, so I currently have an IETF document in edit state. I've spent the past few weeks doing some Auth 48 for cluster 522, and I'm currently preparing 2 of those cluster documents to send off for publication. And then as needed, I do a little bit of errata coordination. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Madison. Sarah?
Hi, I'm actively editing the EVPN redundant MCAS source document, and I'm working with the authors in Auth 48 for cluster 507, which is the SRP and the updates lease. And as needed, I've been adding documents to the queue as they're announced, coordinating with ADs on version updates, and formatting XML files for the team.
Thank you. All right. And as I mentioned, Rebecca sends regrets. She can't be here. Megan?
Yeah, hi. I am actively editing the Acme Onion draft, which is also from the same working group as one of my Auth 48s. And I have one other Auth 48 going right now. And that's all for me.
Right. Thank you. Kaylin?
Hi, everyone. I currently have an IRTF document that I'm actively editing, and that's all for me for right now.
All right. Thanks. Ted?
Hi, I'm currently doing reference reviews for drafts that Sarah has reviewed and formatted. So I have these 6 drafts and nothing really notable or like problematic about them. So hopefully, but I will be picking up more as the week goes on as well. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yeah, I am actively working with Alice on the expedited request because it's a 2-document cluster. And I've got one that's active in Auth 48. The authors have been responding, and then a few to pub. So hoping to get those out later today.
Awesome. Thank you. Karen?
Hi, I have one document that I'm actively editing, and I'm handling 4 documents in Auth 48. 3 are part of cluster 492, and we received a response from one of the authors of 9786, so we'll be working on the first edit round with them. And I have for, RFC 9763 is also in Auth 48, and we have received all of the author approvals, and now we're just waiting for Roman to approve some technical changes, which I know that he's currently working on. And that's it for me right now.
All right, thank you. So also in the notes, we have some to highlight some of the documents. As Sandy and Alice mentioned, we received a formal request from the IESG to expedite a SIPCORE and STIR working groups document for because the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions wants to reference those documents in their own standard that they are updating. So those should be entering Auth 48 soon. And Alice, do you want to speak to the bidirectional issues that we had with 9676?
Sure. So there were layers of issues with including Hebrew characters, especially in an element that has right to left and left to right text inside of it. So the details are here in the notes. And we ended up also adding a text within the document that acknowledges that different applications may display this differently, which we saw with browsers and also saw with editors.
Thank you.
And that doc was published yesterday, I should say.
Yes. So. Yes. Thanks. All right. And then Alana, how about 9770?
Yeah, so for that doc, this is one that I'm helping Megan out with actually. So she's been working with authors to update the SVG to get the correct outputs that they want, but there are still some misalignments with one of the figures, which can be seen in the HTML and the PDF outputs. And there's also another issue where in the PDF output, the long SVG figures are being cut off at the end of the page. So we're working on those issues, and then we'll follow up with the authors for that. And then 9788 is also one of my docs, so I'll just go into that. So this one was moved into Auth 48 yesterday. It kind of has a lot. It has SVG, non-ASCII characters, ABNF, and an index. The non-ASCII characters and the ABNF seem fine. There is an issue with the PDF output where there's misalignment and broken lines in the SVG. The HTML and TXT outputs are fine for those, though. We asked the authors if they want those replaced or redrawn, or if they have any other solutions, and then we're waiting for their response on that. And then we'll also follow up about the index, possibly trimming some of it down, and some clarifications about that as well. That's it.
Thank you. All right. So we have about 6 more minutes. We've got links to the stats in the notes. Sandy, do you want to say anything about those?
I think just to highlight probably something people are interested in is it's currently about 11.5 weeks for a document from the time it enters edit state until it reaches auth 48. And Q1 of this year, the submission, the number of pages going to edit was really high. It pushed us into something called tier 3. So our SLA has defined workloads, right, and expected processing times associated with those workloads. And a tier 3 means it's time to renegotiate the expected processing times because the load is so high. So we're working through it as quickly as we can. And then just to say, like, I think Jean mentioned earlier, like the SLA is one of the bigger transforms we need to work on anyway. So trying to find something that actually has better meaning for the community, especially since XML formatting has been added to the workload. And then there's some links here to where you can find the current data. So some of the stuff I have in here, like the stuff that says QStats as of May 2025, that's static. So someone can always refer and see what it was in May of 2025. But then there's also some links to where you can find current data. So like 2 weeks from now, you want to see what the current processing times are, you can look at the current stuff. Anyone have any questions?
No, thank you. I see, Lynn, you're sharing video. You think you can get your status? Nope. Okay. All right. So, few more minutes. Any questions? Any feedback on this meeting format? Paul.
Looking forward to more of these. I think this is great, and monthly sounds just fine.
Thank you. John?
Agree with Paul. This is great. I do think that you might rethink those Q reports. They could easily be consolidated into a short document or set of notes, or easy way to extract the information from other databases, and probably the group's time could be better spent other ways.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, this concludes our first community call. Thank you very much for your time and for your input and questions. Really appreciate it. And we will see you back in a month. Thanks.
Excellent time management. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting, Jean.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jean.